This is GARIS Essays, that is 2-3 page opinion pieces on topics such as species dominance, the global state, politics, femtotech, religion, society and education. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is essay number 5, entitled There Are No Cyborgs. And for the flyer itself, There Are No Cyborgs by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Abstract. This part essay, part mathematical calculation makes the basic point that there will be no cyborgs in the sense that the computational capacity of a nanotech grain of sand is a quintillion times that of the human brain, making the distinction between a cyborg and a pure intellect pointless. Hence, any human being wishing to convert himself into a cyborg will effectively be killing himself. He will no longer be he, but an intellect in human disguise. This argument has implications for the species dominance debate. Computational capacities. In my media appearances, I often talk about a grain of nanotech sand being added to a newly born baby's brain to convert it into a cyborg. I finally got around to actually calculating just how much greater the computational capacity of that grain of sand would be compared to that of a human brain, assuming classical computing capacities. If one assumes quantum computing capacities, the quantum estimate is astronomically larger. I'll spend the next 2 paragraphs giving the calculation in detail and then draw some political conclusions relevant to the species dominance debate. The calculation. We start with some basic assumptions. Let the grain of sand be a 1 millimeter cubed, that is 10 to the minus 3 of a meter, on a side. Assume the molecules in the sand have a cubic dimension of 1 nanometer on a side, that is 10 to the minus 9 of a meter. Let each molecule consist of 10 atoms for the purposes of an order of magnitude calculation. Assume the grain of sand has been nanoteched such that each atom can switch its state usefully in a femtosecond, that is 10 to the minus 15 of a second. Assume the computational capacity of the human brain is 10 to the power 16 bits per second. That is 100 billion neurons in the human brain times 10,000, which is the average number of connections between neurons, times 10, which is the maximum number of bits per second firing rate at each interneuronal or synaptic connection. So that equals 10 to the 11 by 10 to the 4 by 10 to the 1 equals 10 to the 16. I now show that the nanotech grain of sand has a total bit switching computational rate that is the factor of a quintillion, that's a million trillion times larger than the brain's 10 to the power 16 bits per second. How many sand molecules in the cubic millimeter? Answer, a million cubed, that is 10 to the 18, with each of the 10 atoms per molecule switching 10 to the 15 times per second. So a total switching, that's bits per second, rate of 10 to the 18 times 10 to the 15 times 10 to the 1 equals 10 to the 34. This is 10 to the 34 divided by 10 to the 16 equals 10 to the 18 times greater. That is a million trillion or a quintillion. Political consequences for the species dominance debate. People like Kurzweil, Warwick, etc. claim that there's a third ideological human group in the species dominance debate, besides the cosmists, who are pro-intellect building, and the Terrans, who are anti-intellect building, namely the cyborgists, who want to add intellectual components to themselves, thus converting themselves into intellect gods. They argue that by converting humans into intellects via the cyborg route, it will be possible to avoid a giga-death intellect war between the cosmists and the Terrans, for the simple reason that the human race will have converted itself into intellects, so there won't be any cosmists or Terrans left, that is, human beings, to wage the war. Everyone will have been upgraded into an intellect. There's not much point in using the term cyborg, because, as the above calculation shows, the human component in the cyborgian brain is only one part in a quintillion, a million trillion, so can effectively be totally ignored. So really, there is no third ideological group. There are only cosmists and Terrans and Artlects. Even in the very early days of cyborgian conversion, the vastly superior computational capacities of nanotech matter will make itself felt. The first cyborgs will very quickly become Artlects. Since their bodies would still be human, the Terran paranoia against them would be great. The Terrans would be unable to distinguish a cyborg from a human just by looking at him. Hence all human-looking beings would be suspects. A potential cyborg then needs to consider the fact of the above calculation and become fully conscious that a decision to add the grain of sand or more is a decision to commit suicide as a human being. The resulting cyborg is utterly dominated by the intellectual capacity of the sand grain, which totally drowns out the human component, one part in a quintillion, and probably vastly more as quantum computing scales up. This means that if the mother cyborgs her baby, she loses her baby. If adult children cyborg themselves, their elderly parents lose their adult children. Thus it is clear that cyborging will be profoundly disruptive to humanity. A large proportion, probably about half, and this needs to be researched more thoroughly, of humanity is deeply, viscerally opposed to cyborgism and cosmism, and will go to war to stop both the cosmists from building pure Artlects and the cyborgists from converting themselves into near pure Artlects. They will simply not tolerate becoming an inferior species, with all the enormous risks to the survival of the human species that the rise of the Artelect raises. When I hear cyborgists saying such things as, "I want to become an Artelect god myself by converting myself into an Artelect by adding intellectual components to my brain," I become cynical, because I wonder if they realize how enormous the computational capacity of Artelected matter is. I sense that too often these cyborgists are ignorant of the physcomp, that's physics of computation, calculations applicable to nanotech matter. They need to be made aware that a decision to cyborg themselves is a major one. It means the end of their lives as humans. They would no longer be human, they would be Artelects, which from a human being's point of view is to say that they would be utterly alien, frightening and worthy of extermination. The species dominance debate goes mainstream in 2011, so I wrote this before that date. I feel that 2011 will be the year that the species dominance debate goes mainstream, at least in the US, where this debate has been led. Ray Kurzweil has recently been featured in a Times magazine article, and I was featured in a History Channel program, Prophets of Doom. There will be several movies in 2011 on the same theme, so the general public will become more exposed to the ideas. If one thinks back 5 years and asks oneself, how conscious was I of the climate change issue? Most people would say, only a little, if at all. I would not be at all surprised that 5 years from now, 2015, okay, so I wrote it in 2010, it's still 2 years. As I speak, it is now mid-2017. The issue of species dominance will be part of the educated person's general knowledge, as much as is climate change today. So the species dominance debate goes mainstream in 2011, and next topic, and heats up. The species dominance issue will not go away. Every month, technical progress is taking humanity closer to being able to build Artelects. The issue will heat up, and tempers will flare. Political parties will be formed on the issue. The debate will later start raging. Then the assassinations and sabotages will start. People will take sides. The two ideologies, cosmism and Terranism, are both very powerful. That is, building gods versus preserving the human species. Do we build gods or our potential exterminators? And so far have split humanity down the middle. Most individuals are ambivalent about the issue, feeling the awe of building Artelect gods, as well as feeling the horror of a prospective giga-death Artelect war. Personally, I'm glad I'm alive now. I don't want to see all this horror that's going to consume my grandchildren, and billions like him. I don't want to see it. If I live into my 90s, I will see the species dominance debate rage. It's starting already amongst the AI, that's artificial intelligence specialists. But I won't see the war, thank God. Postscript. After submitting this essay to Ben Gersel, he replied with the following mildly edited comment, which I thought was interesting. Hugo, you seem to have overlooked one major point. Some people may want to become cyborgs with a more limited machine component than what is potentially possible. That is, they might choose to be 50% human and 50% machine in terms of computing power, even though it would technically be possible to become 99.9999999% machine computationally and only 0.0001% human. This doesn't affect your arguments about species dominance, but it does, IMO in my opinion, mean there could really be three political groups. A, those wanting to only legacy humanity, Terrans. B, those wanting only limited expansion of human capabilities, e.g. 50-50 human/machine hybrids, the Cyborgists. C, those wanting expansion without unnecessary limits, the Cosmists. From a Cosmist viewpoint, the Cyborgs and Terrans will be basically the same thing. From a Terran viewpoint, the Cyborgs and Cosmists will be basically the same thing. But to a Cyborgist, the Terrans and Cosmists will seem qualitatively different. That's it. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name, De Garis Essays. Ciao.